What was the horrific original ending to a Disney movie, and why did the Harry Potter films feel the need to cut a specific subplot? These book scenes were just too much for the movies. The Twilight Saga adapted the 4 volumes of Stephenie Meyer's book series into 5 movies, splitting Breaking Dawn into 2 parts, and on the whole it does a pretty good job of sharing most of the Cullen family backstories. Rosalie was brutalized by her fiancé, Emmett was nearly killed by a bear, and Jasper was a Confederate soldier during the Civil War. Patriarch Carlisle saved Edward and Esme from near death, and he himself was turned by a coven of vampires in the 1600s. The only person in the Cullen family whose backstory we don't learn in the movies is Alice.
My dear, dear Alice, we're so glad to see you here after all.
Alice was born a human with precognitive abilities and dealt with most of the people in her hometown shunning her because they thought she was cursed. After the death of her mother, Alice discovered that her father and his new wife's father conspired to kill her mother. In order to keep her quiet, Alice's father had her committed to an asylum where she underwent brutal experiments and lost her memory after electroshock therapy. While it would have been good to learn more about Alice in the movie, her traumatic experience would have been very difficult to portray on screen without risking the film series' appeal to preteen girls who are more interested in the central romance of the movie. The Shining is one of the most lauded horror movies of all time, and certainly one of Stephen King's most famous novels. Part of what makes a movie so good is its ability to create anxiety, tension, and fear without countless, overt displays of gore. In the novel, Jack Torrance begins a story as a family man with writer's block, who's trying to provide a good life for his wife and son, Danny. He slowly descends into madness as the Overlook Hotel, of which he is the winter caretaker, comes to possess his mind and body. Towards the end of the book, Jack is chasing Danny with a rogue mallet when he is able to briefly take control of his body back from the malevolence of the hotel. Jack entreats Danny to run away and bashes his own face in with the mallet in order to prevent himself from pursuing his son. In the movie, Jack enters the film a suspicious figure from the start and becomes even more deranged as the story moves forward. The film version of Jack never recovers himself for even a second as he chases his wife and child onto the grounds of the Overlook. Audiences were spared the gory mallet scene because Jack wasn't a loving father in the film version of the story. Instead, we watch as he nearly axes his wife and son to death before they're able to escape. Jack then freezes to death in the hotel maze, face intact. Despite the fact that J.K. Rowling's 7-book Harry Potter series was adapted into 8 movies, a lot of content still needed to be cut from the films to save time. There are dozens of chapters and subplots that were altered or entirely removed from the film adaptations. And it's not surprising that one of them was spew. In the novel Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Hermione comes to learn more about the plight of house elves in the wizarding world. Much to her horror, house elves have been enslaved by wizards for centuries, and Hermione takes issue with this. Inspired by Dobby's desire to escape Lucius Malfoy's ownership, Hermione begins an organization called the Society for the Preservation of Elvish Welfare.
Master has presented Dobby with clothes. Dobby is free.
Unfortunately for Hermione, Rowling writes about spew as if it's a joke. Characters use synonyms for spew, think barf or hurl, and the elves at Hogwarts come to resent Hermione for attempting to free them. Since the 4th book's release, Hermione's organization has been a source of great debate and controversy within the Harry Potter fandom, so it's no wonder they decided to leave it out of the movies. The film adaptation of Fight Club, directed by David Fincher and based on the novel of the same name by Chuck Palahniuk, didn't do incredibly well at the box office, but has since become a cult favorite. The movie follows its narrator as he becomes a comrade of Tyler Durden, an anti-capitalist anarchist who seeks to disrupt America's consumerist society and who starts a bare-knuckle fight club.
An exit door procedure at 30,000 feet. The illusion of safety.
The movie shows plenty of violence, but some of the worst stuff in the books was still omitted for the screen adaptation. In Chapter 28, for example, the narrator, having realized that Tyler Durden is his own alter ego and a figment of his imagination, goes to a fight club and arranges to fight 50 men in a row. He's practically pulverized. He bites off a chunk of his own tongue at one point, and a wound in his cheek is ripped open much wider so his teeth are visible through his face. There's still plenty of brutality in the movie, but it isn't hard to see why this moment didn't make the cut. It's hard to imagine why Disney thought Victor Hugo's The Hunchback of Notre Dame would make a good animated musical marketed toward a family audience. The original novel centers around a 16-year-old Romani girl in Paris named Esmeralda, and all the men who lust after her. Quasimodo, the titular character, falls deeply in love with Esmeralda after she defends him from humiliation, but she also catches the attention of his reluctant father figure, Claude Frollo.
By the way, great mask.
In the movie, Frollo sets Esmeralda up to be killed after she rejects his advances, but Quasimodo saves her. Even though Quasimodo doesn't end up with Esmeralda, he's finally accepted into society, and they all live happily ever after. In the book, however, Frollo arranges for Esmeralda to be hanged and watches her die from the balcony of the cathedral. Quasimodo, full of rage at the death of his love, pushes Frollo off the balcony, killing him. Later on, Quasimodo visits Esmeralda's grave and sits there until he starves to death. Clearly, that's not exactly a standard Disney ending, so some crucial changes were required to make it more suitable for their target audience. Trainspotting, based on a novel by the same name by Irvin Welsh, is a gritty film about heroin addicts. Renton, the protagonist, experiences withdrawals and relapses throughout the story and does many brutal, often gross things in order to either abstain from drugs or find them.
What's on the menu this evening, sir?
The movie doesn't shy away from the grotesque elements of drug addiction, but there's one scene in the book that didn't make it into the film. In the book, Renton attends his brother's funeral and hooks up with his brother's girlfriend in the toilets. While this is problematic, it's made worse by the fact that she's heavily pregnant. As in, she could go into labor at any moment. Renton wonders to himself whether sex with a very pregnant person can be considered a threesome, and then notes that his private area is very pungent because he hasn't showered in a while. It's a whole new rock bottom for Renton in the books, and one that isn't needed in the film. Stephen King's characters don't always survive his stories, but many different film adaptations have sought to leave the audience with a more hopeful ending. Such is the case with Cujo, a Stephen King adaptation released in 1983. The film stays mostly true to the book, thanks to the relatively straightforward plot and premise. A dog is infected with rabies and kills people. However, the movie ending is much less tragic. The character of Donna spends most of the movie attempting to protect her young son Tad from Cujo by hiding in their broken Ford Pinto. But as they hide out, Tad and Donna suffer from heat stroke and dehydration, and Donna tries to escape the car with her son in order to save him.
It's not a monster, it's just a doggy.
In the novel, by the time Cujo is killed by Donna's husband Vic, Tad has already died from heat stroke, and Donna sits on the ground wailing over his lifeless body. The end. Luckily in the film, Tad makes it out alive. The novel Life of Pi by Jan Martel was adapted to film by director Ang Lee in 2012. Due to the unique narrative structure of the novel, which is told in retrospect by an older Pi who takes time to explain things or ruminate on ideas, the screenplay needed to make changes in order to make the story work in a visual medium.
I don't know how to adapt this. I mean, I should have just stuck with my own stuff. I don't know why I thought I could write this.
One of the least surprising changes from the book to the movie takes place when Pi finds himself on the lifeboat with a hyena, zebra, and an orangutan named Orange Juice. In the book, Pi and the animals coexist on the boat for a while as the hyena circles the wounded zebra. Finally, against the wishes of the orangutan, the hyena rips into the zebra and eats him, very graphically. When the orangutan protests, she's beheaded by the hyena. In the movie, most of the gore happens off camera, thankfully, and Orange Juice's wounds are minimal. She dies, but at least the audience has spared the visual of a headless corpse. Jodi Picoult's award-winning novel My Sister's Keeper was adapted for film in 2009, starring Cameron Diaz and Abigail Breslin. The movie follows the Fitzgerald family, which consists of the parents Sarah and Brian and their 3 children, Kate, Jesse, and Anna. After Kate is diagnosed with leukemia, Sarah and Brian conceive Anna in order to provide Kate with whatever blood and marrow donations she needs for her treatment. The story follows Anna as she asks for medical emancipation from her parents. She wants the power to choose whether or not she donates parts of herself to her sister. Sarah is particularly upset with Anna until it's revealed that Kate asked Anna to do it, because she wants to end her cancer battle and spare her family any more pain.
Hey, baby, what's your sign?
Cancer?
You're a Cancer?
No, I'm Malia, but I have cancer.
The movie's ending is predictable. Anna doesn't donate her kidney to Kate, and Kate eventually passes away. But in the book, it's actually Anna who dies. The point of the novel was to ruminate on the unpredictable, often meaningless nature of death by having Anna pass away in a car accident after becoming emancipated. Kate receives her late sister's kidney and lives. And it's this ending, among other things, that make the novel so much more masterful than its film adaptation. Easily the most controversial scene in Stephen King's 1986 horror novel It takes place when, after the Losers Club defeats the titular evil entity, our preteen protagonists get lost in the dairy sewer system. The group's lone female, Beverly, comes up with a plan to help unite the group. In order to survive, she must have sex with each of the 6 boys. Oddly enough, this works, as one of the boys remembers how to escape the sewer system after his sexual experience. Unsurprisingly, there's no childhood sewer sex party in any on-screen version of it. Screenwriter Gary Doberman told Entertainment Weekly, "While it's an important scene, it doesn't define the book in any way, and it shouldn't. We knew what the intent was of that scene and why he put it in there, and we tried to accomplish what the intent was in a different way." But wait, what was King's intent? Naturally, people had questions. In a message board post, King explained, "I wasn't really thinking of the sexual aspect of it. The book dealt with childhood and adulthood. The sexual act connected childhood and adulthood. Times have changed since I wrote that scene, and there is now more sensitivity to those issues." Perhaps, but it was still pretty weird in the 80s. When thinking of Stanley Kubrick's 1971 film adaptation of Anthony Burgess's dystopian crime novel A Clockwork Orange, many people recall the ultra-violent scene in which Alexander's gang of droogs invade a home and force the owner to watch while they rape his wife. With said scene in place, it's hard to believe anything from the book got cut.
He's enterprising, aggressive, young, bold, vicious. He'll do.
But the scene in question comes after Alex meets a couple of lollipop-looking girls at the record shop, takes them home, and has what appears to be a consensual fast-motion threesome, set to the William Tell overture. In the book, however, the encounter is a lot less friendly, and the girls are apparently only, quote, 10 years young. Sexual violence against a grown woman was already pushing it, but sexual violence against two girls? That's too much, even for a Kubrick film. If you or anyone you know has been a victim of sexual assault, help is available. Visit the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network website or contact RAIN's National Helpline at 1-800-656-HOPE 4673.